There are moments in life when we pause and ask ourselves, was this all meant to happen? Is there something greater guiding me? Or am I simply drifting through chaos? This is not just a question. It's a doorway. In this journey, we'll walk through the quiet corners of fate, choice, pain, and purpose. We'll listen, not to the noise of the world, but to the voice we've silenced for too long. You are not here by accident. And maybe, just maybe, this is the moment your soul has been waiting for. Sometimes we look back at our lives and notice the strange order of things, as if each step, even the ones that felt wrong, led us precisely to where we are now. It's not just memory romanticizing the past, it's something deeper. Something silent that moved alongside us all this time, unnoticed but undeniable. It's in the way you stumbled into the right book at the right moment, in the timing of a conversation that shifted the direction of your heart, and how someone you barely knew became a chapter in your soul's journey. We like to think of life as chaotic, unpredictable, and perhaps unfair. But when you quiet the noise and truly observe, you begin to see the invisible threads, events, people, moments, all seemingly random, yet intricately connected. You are never just wandering. You are being led. But led by what? That's the question that keeps returning, isn't it? Was it fate? God? The universe? Or simply a story we tell ourselves to cope with the unknown? Perhaps it doesn't matter what name we give it. What matters is the feeling. That deep, unspoken sense that there's more at play than we understand. More than logic can grasp. As children, we felt it naturally, the sense that life had meaning beyond what was visible. We made wishes on stars. We believed in signs. We spoke to silence and expected it to answer. Then we grew up. The world taught us to be rational, to plan, to chase, to control. But still, in our quiet moments, we returned to the wonder. We noticed the poetry in our path, the way a heartbreak prepared us for a love we couldn't have imagined, the way a rejection saved us from the wrong door, the way a delay became protection. Maybe that's destiny, not a fixed script, but a deeper wisdom weaving through our lives. A subtle current nudging us, inviting us, never forcing. Maybe the moments that broke us weren't punishments, but part of a deeper recalibration. Maybe every twist in the story was necessary, not to teach us a lesson, but to shape who we are becoming. And maybe, just maybe, we agreed to all of it before we arrived. What if the life you're living now is not an accident, but a response to your soul's quiet longing to evolve, to remember something it once knew, to come back to something sacred? What if every choice, every encounter, every pause has been a conversation between you and the unseen? Some call it fate. Others call it karma. Some call it the divine blueprint. But underneath all these names lies the same truth. You were meant to be here. And that truth doesn't mean everything is easy or fair. Destiny doesn't promise comfort. It promises alignment. It pulls us into the exact fires we need to walk through to burn away the illusions. It places us before mirrors we'd rather avoid, people who trigger us, failures that humble us, circumstances that seem cruel. But what if those were sacred contracts? What if the people who broke your heart came to do exactly that, not to harm, but to awaken? What if the job that collapsed beneath you wasn't a loss, but liberation? What if all the paths you didn't take weren't mistakes, but guidance? It's hard to see it in the moment. Pain feels senseless. Detours feel wrong. But over time, if we listen closely, we start to hear the echo. You are never off track. You are simply being redirected. And the redirection is part of the design. You don't have to believe in destiny in the traditional sense. You don't have to imagine a grand being writing every detail of your life. But you can begin to trust that your life is meaningful, that it's speaking to you through delays, through joy, through heartbreak, through longing. And you can begin to see that behind the ordinary is the extraordinary. The person you sat next to on the bus, who planted an idea in your mind. The city you moved to for one reason, but stayed for another. The words a stranger said that wouldn't leave your heart. These are not accidents. They are threads. And if you follow them, you begin to see a tapestry, imperfect, tangled, mysterious, but undeniably yours. You are not just living. You are being lived by something ancient, something sacred. And it's not happening to you. It's happening with you. So pause, breathe, look around at your life not as a problem to solve, but a message to interpret. What is your soul trying to tell you through the life you're living? What are the invisible threads that pulled you here, to this exact moment? Hearing these words, feeling this stirring in your chest. The more you notice them, the more they reveal themselves. And once you see them, you can never unsee. That's the beginning. Not of fate, but of awareness. The awareness that while you may not control the tide, you were never meant to drift aimlessly. You are here, now, and that means something. We are raised in a world that tells us we are the authors of our fate. That if we dream big enough, hustle hard enough, visualize with enough clarity, and believe without doubt, we can have anything we want. Control becomes the holy grail. We are taught to fear uncertainty, to silence doubt, to strive for the wheel. So we build plans, 5 years out, 10 years ahead. We check boxes. We set goals. We create vision boards and imagine perfect outcomes. But life often doesn't follow. It detours. It delays. It denies. And when it does, we panic. We question our worth, our choices, our belief. We wonder what we did wrong. But maybe it's not about doing wrong. Maybe it's about the illusion we've been sold, that life is a machine and we are its engineers. That if we press the right buttons, the results will follow. But we are not machines. We are souls in motion, carried by currents far deeper than effort. Have you ever done everything right and still ended up in the wrong place? Have you ever worked tirelessly only to be broken by the very thing you built? Or loved with your whole heart only to be left? That is not failure. That is life whispering. You were never in control, not in the way you thought. Control is comforting because it gives us the illusion of safety. But the truth is, safety was never the point. Growth was. Awakening was. And awakening rarely comes wrapped in perfection. It comes through the moments we can't fix, the storms we didn't predict, the doors that closed without warning. It comes when we're stripped of our strategies, left to face the rawness of being alive. And that's when something else begins, surrender. Not as a last resort, but as a sacred turning point. You begin to realize that control isn't the source of power. Presence is. That knowing doesn't come from planning, but from trusting. Not blindly, not passively, but deeply. Trusting that even what looks like ruin might be reshaping you. Trusting that being broken open is not the end, but the invitation to a different kind of beginning. Control tells you that you are responsible for everything. Destiny teaches you that you are part of something larger. Control is clenched fists. Destiny is open hands. One resists, the other allows. And in allowing, you begin to hear the subtle guidance, not from outside, but from within. A whisper that says, "This path you didn't plan may be the one that leads you home." Think of the things you tried to force that never worked. Think of the timing you begged for that never arrived. Now think of the things that found you when you weren't looking. The people who came out of nowhere. The opportunities you didn't plan for. The blessings that arrived disguised as endings. There is a rhythm to life, one we can only feel when we stop trying to conduct the orchestra and start listening to the music. You are not the composer. You are the dancer. And life is the song. It doesn't mean you are powerless. It means your power is different. Not in making life obey you, but in learning to move with it. In bending without breaking. in choosing with awareness, but letting go of attachment. That's the paradox. You can choose your attitude, your actions, your presence, but you can't choose the outcomes. And that's where freedom lives. In the letting go. In the trust that what's meant for you will not miss you, and what misses you was never truly meant. So if you're feeling lost because your plans unraveled, pause. You are not behind. You are not late. You are simply being rerouted. And perhaps this new way, the one you didn't ask for, holds a depth you never imagined. Sometimes the greatest kindness life can offer is not giving you what you want, but what you need. And often we only understand this in hindsight. So breathe, loosen the grip. Control is not the key to fulfillment. Alignment is. And alignment doesn't always make sense. It's felt before it's understood. It's quiet before it's loud. But once you taste it, once you recognize the peace that comes from surrendering to something wiser than your plans, you will never crave control the same way again. You will begin to trust the unknown. You will begin to listen for the signs. You will begin to walk with a softer heart, not because you gave up, but because you woke up. This is not weakness. This is the courage to live with open hands. And maybe, just maybe, that's where true destiny begins. There is a place where fate and choice meet, and it's not always where we expect. Most of us believe they are opposites, that if fate exists, choice is an illusion, or if we have free will, then fate must be fiction. But what if they are not enemies? What if they are partners in a quiet, complex dance, each shaping the other, each incomplete without the other? Imagine your life as a river. You didn't choose the river. You didn't choose its origin or destination. You didn't choose the shape of the valley it flows through, or the storms that fall upon it. That is fate, the river's design, the contours of your story that were set before you even arrived. But you are the boat, and you can steer. You can fight the current, you can surrender to it, or you can learn to read its flow and move with wisdom. You may not control the direction of the river, but how you move within it, that is your power. That is choice. Some moments are predetermined. The family you were born into, the body you inhabit, the time and place you arrived. These are the foundation. But from there, your choices begin to shape how your soul learns, grows, and responds. Two people can live the same fate and create entirely different destinies. One sees their pain as a prison. The other sees it as a doorway. One runs from the fire. The other walks through and comes out glowing. Fate gave them the same river, but choice gave them different songs. We often ask, why did this happen to me? But a deeper question is, what will I do with this? Because the event may not have been yours to choose, but the meaning you give it, that is yours alone. That's where the dance begins. You are not a puppet to fate, and you are not the sole architect either. You are both dancer and choreographer. Life gives you music, sometimes wild, sometimes soft, sometimes chaotic. You can curse the tempo, or you can move with it. Sometimes fate places you in the path of something unavoidable, a heartbreak, a loss, a failure. And in that moment, you might feel powerless. But even in that place, you have a choice. To open or to close, to grow bitter or grow deeper, to hold on or let go. And that choice makes all the difference, not just in the outcome, but in who you become. The question is not whether you can change fate, but whether you can rise within it, whether you can make something beautiful from the hand you were dealt, whether you can meet the moment with courage instead of fear. Fate gives us the invitation. Choice is the RSVP. Fate says, here is your story. Choice asks, how will you read it? There are paths in life that seem to find us. People who show up without explanation, but stay to rewrite everything. Lessons that arrive at just the right moment. We didn't seek them, but when they came, we had to choose. Ignore or engage, resist or receive. And those choices, subtle as they may seem, are where destiny breathes. The truth is, every day you are shaping your fate. Not in the dramatic sense of grand decisions, but in the quiet, invisible ways. In how you treat the person you love. In how you speak to yourself in moments of failure. In whether you numb your pain or sit with it. These are the brushstrokes of destiny. Not written in stone, but painted in presence. If fate is the canvas, your choices are the colors. And no one else can paint your life the way you can. So yes, there will be things you can't control. Yes, some moments will break your heart without your permission. But within those moments, you still hold a sacred power to decide what kind of soul you want to become. Fate may whisper your name, but it is your response that echoes into eternity. And here is the grace. Even when you make the wrong choice, life doesn't punish. It redirects. It invites again and again, until you hear it, until you're ready, until you begin to dance not against life, but with it. That is the hidden dance, the space where fate offers the music, and your soul, quietly, powerfully, begins to move. Long before you had a name, you were part of a story written not just by your own soul, but by those who came before you, your parents, their parents, and the ones even they never met. Their choices, their wounds, their dreams, they didn't vanish. They lived on, not in history books, but in the quiet codes of your being, the way your heart responds to love, the fears that whisper when you try to rise, the patterns that keep repeating in your relationships, your work, your inner world. These are not all yours. Some were passed down, carried silently, unknowingly. You inherited more than genes. You inherited longing. You inherited pain. You inherited unfinished prayers. And this is not to blame, but to understand. Because until we see what we carry, we can't choose what to keep. Many of us walk through life wondering why we feel heavy, why we sabotage joy, why we fear success, why we settle for less than we are. We call it weakness, laziness, bad luck. But sometimes it's not us. It's the echoes of another life inside us. A grandmother who never spoke her truth. A father who carried shame he never named. A great uncle who buried his sorrow in silence. These stories live in us. And until they are seen, they repeat. Until they are honored, they haunt. But the moment we turn toward them, not with blame, but with compassion, something begins to shift. We realize that we are not just products of our lineage. We are also the threshold, the ones who can choose differently, the ones who can heal not just ourselves, but the line we came from. To do this is not to erase the past, but to make peace with it, to say, I see you. I honor what you survived. And now, I will choose with awareness. This is how inherited destiny becomes conscious evolution. You don't have to carry everything. You don't have to repeat the patterns. You don't have to live the unlived lives of those before you. But you do have to notice them. And that noticing begins with asking, what am I holding that isn't mine? What belief do I keep repeating? That I'm unworthy, that love hurts, that safety is not possible. Where did that come from? And can I gently begin to lay it down? This is not easy work. It takes courage to face the invisible. It takes tenderness to grieve stories that never belonged to us. But in doing so, we create space. Space for our own truth. Space for a new story. And perhaps this courageous seeing, is also part of your destiny. Perhaps you came here not just to live your life, but to break cycles, to soften old wounds, to love in ways your ancestors never could. You are the edge of thousands of lives. You are the hope they never dared to hold. You are the prayer they whispered in their sleep. And every time you choose growth over fear, love over protection, presence over numbness, you honor them. You set them free. You set yourself free. So no, you are not entirely free of the past, but you are not bound by it either. You are the meeting point, the living portal. And what you do with that, how you choose to carry, release, or transform, becomes your true inheritance. This is the story you get to write, not alone, but with all the voices that live within you, watching, hoping, cheering as you turn inherited destiny into awakened choice. You are not just one life. You are a continuation, and you are becoming something new. Pain has a way of entering quietly and staying longer than we ever imagined. It doesn't knock. It doesn't ask permission. It arrives as loss, as heartbreak, as disappointment, as the crumbling of something we believed was solid. And when it does, everything in us wants to escape. We fight, we distract, we build walls and wear masks and tell ourselves we're fine. But beneath the surface, we are breaking. And yet, somewhere in that breaking, something deeper begins to form. Something that doesn't come from comfort. Something that only awakens in the fire. We don't choose pain. No one does. But pain, in its strange and often cruel disguise, chooses us, not to punish, but to reveal, to open the locked doors we never knew existed inside our hearts, to strip away the illusions we clung to, the identities we wore like armor, to push us beyond the edge of what we thought we could handle, only to discover that we are more resilient than we ever believed. Every painful experience carves us open, and in that opening, there is space for something real to enter. Not the superficial joy of temporary pleasure, but the grounded, unshakable knowing that we are alive, still breathing, still becoming, still here. Pain does not make you broken. It makes you honest. It brings you face to face with the truth you've avoided, the grief you buried, the wound you never let heal. And in that rawness, in that sacred unraveling, there is a power. Because when you have suffered and still choose to love, that is courage. When you've lost and still choose to hope, that is grace. When you've been shattered and still choose to rise, that is destiny in motion. Too often, we see pain as something to get through, to forget, to move past. But what if pain is not a detour? What if it is the path? What if the most transformative parts of your life were not the triumphs, but the tears? The nights you didn't think you'd make it. The mornings you woke up with a broken heart, but kept going anyway. The moments you didn't recognize yourself, because everything you thought you were had fallen apart. These are not failures. These are sacred initiations. Your soul's way of saying, it's time to let go. It's time to remember who you really are, not the role you've played, not the expectations you carried, not the version of yourself others wanted, but the you beneath all that, the one that only emerges when everything else is stripped away. And this is where pain becomes sacred, because it burns away the false. It reveals the hidden. It humbles the ego. And through it, we touch the truth, not just of our own story, but of everyone's. Because pain connects us. It reminds us that we are human, that beneath our differences, we all bleed, we all grieve, we all long to be held, to be seen, to be known. Your pain is not a sign that you are lost. It's a sign that you are awake. And the more you allow yourself to feel it, not as a victim, but as a witness, the more you begin to see its shape, its message, its medicine. Yes, it hurts, sometimes unbearably, but it also breaks you open in a way that nothing else can. It softens you. It teaches you to listen. It teaches you to be kind. Because once you've suffered, you can no longer look at others the same way. You begin to see the pain behind their eyes, the stories they don't tell, the battles they are fighting in silence. You become gentler, more present, more human. And that, too, is destiny. The kind that doesn't come with applause, but with depth. The kind that doesn't shout, but whispers. There is no formula for healing. No timeline for grief. But there is truth in allowing, in sitting with the ache without trying to fix it, in letting it speak, in asking it what it has to teach. Pain is not the enemy. The real enemy is the belief that you should not feel it, that you should be strong, resilient, untouchable. But you were never meant to be untouched. You were meant to be moved, to be reshaped, to be reborn, not despite the pain, but because of it. Some of the most beautiful souls you will ever meet are the ones who've walked through fire and came out carrying buckets of water for those still consumed by the flames. They did not escape pain. They transmuted it. They used it. They let it refine them instead of define them. And you can too. Not all pain is destiny, but destiny is written in how we meet our pain, in whether we numb or feel, in whether we collapse or rise, in whether we let the wound close with wisdom or keep it festering with denial. And here's the grace. Even if you've avoided it, even if you've tried to run, even if you've numbed yourself for years, it's not too late. The path is still open. The invitation still stands. Your pain still holds the key, not to destroy you, but to awaken you, to bring you back to your heart, to help you remember the light you carry, not in spite of the darkness, but born from it. You do not have to love your pain, but if you can learn to sit beside it, to breathe with it, to stop fighting it, you may begin to see what it's trying to give you. Not comfort, not easy answers, but truth, depth, clarity, and the strength that comes not from avoidance, but from presence. The pain that shapes the path is not a curse. It's a mirror. It shows you where your deepest work lies. And when you answer it, not with resistance, but with reverence, you begin to walk the path not of avoidance, but of transformation. This is the pain that does not just hurt, it heals. It frees. It writes a destiny not of escape, but of wholeness. There are moments in life that don't make sense until much later. Moments that pass like whispers, quiet and unremarkable, yet they shift everything. You don't always notice them as they happen. Sometimes it's just a look across a room, a sentence in a book, a stranger who smiles when you feel like falling apart. Sometimes it's the day you decide, without fanfare, to take a different street, and you meet someone who will change your life. Or the night you feel most alone and choose to write instead of sleep, and in your own words, you find your soul. These moments don't announce themselves as significant. They slip in, gentle, unassuming, but they carry seeds. Seeds that grow into the forests of your future. And when you look back, you realize that wasn't random. That wasn't meaningless. That was something finding me. Or maybe someone I was meant to find. There's a kind of magic in the mundane. If you're paying attention, we're taught to look for destiny in big events. The wedding, the promotion, the move to another country. But destiny doesn't always dress in celebration. Sometimes it wears silence. Sometimes it arrives in a delay, a detour, a pause. Sometimes it enters your life through inconvenience. You miss a train and you meet the person who tells you something you needed to hear. You lose a job, and in the stillness that follows, you remember what you truly love. These aren't coincidences. They are course corrections. Quiet nudges from something that sees the whole picture, not just the moment. And they happen more often than we realize. We miss them when we rush, when we expect fireworks, when we demand that meaning must come loudly. But if you slow down just enough, you begin to see them. The moments that found you. The people who arrived right when your heart couldn't carry the weight alone. The lessons that came wrapped in discomfort, but left you wiser. We like to think we are the ones choosing everything, but sometimes we are being chosen. Not just by people, but by moments. Moments that say, you're ready now. Ready to grow. Ready to remember. Ready to let go. And these moments don't always feel good. Some of them break you. But even in the breaking, there is guidance. a deeper rhythm moving through the chaos, calling you towards something more honest, more real. The problem is, we often try to explain these moments away. We rationalize them. We file them under coincidence or luck. But deep down we know. We know when something found us. We feel it in the body. A soft chill, a stirring, a sudden stillness. The sense that something just shifted. And when you live with that awareness, everything changes. You stop demanding certainty. You start welcoming the unexpected. You begin to see each interaction as a possible turning point. Every ordinary day becomes sacred ground, because you never know when a sentence will open a locked door in your mind, or when someone's presence will remind you of a truth you forgot, or when an ending will become the beginning your soul was waiting for. The more you open to this mystery, the more it reveals itself. And it doesn't always lead to something permanent. Sometimes the person who awakens you only stays a season. Sometimes the insight that changes your life comes from a fleeting moment. That doesn't make it any less meaningful. Not everything meant to find you is meant to stay. Some things arrive to shake you, to wake you, to steer you just a few degrees off the path you are stuck in. And that's enough. That's everything. Don't underestimate the power of a passing moment. Your entire life can shift because of one. A phone call you almost didn't answer. A place you almost didn't go. A chance you almost didn't take. These are the threads of destiny, woven through the fabric of your ordinary days. And the more you trust that, the more you stop trying to force your path. You start to listen. You start to feel your way forward instead of pushing. You begin to move from alignment, not anxiety. And you begin to trust that the life meant for you is already looking for you. That the people who belong in your life will find you, not through struggle, but through resonance. That the doors meant to open will open, not when you demand it, but when you're ready. This is not about passivity, it's about presence. About paying attention to the soft signs. About honoring the moments that move you, even when you don't understand them yet. You are being guided, even when it feels like wandering, even when it feels like waiting. You are being shaped by a wisdom greater than your plans. And one day, when you look back, you will see how the smallest moments held the greatest meaning. You will see that nothing was wasted, that every breath, every tear, every encounter, it all mattered. It all brought you here. And here, wherever you are right now, is exactly where the next moment is waiting to find you. There comes a point in every life when we look around and whisper, "This isn't what I wanted." The path we're on feels too narrow or too heavy. The relationships feel misaligned. The work feels empty. And in that discomfort, we begin to resist. We push back against what is. We fight our fate. It begins subtly. A quiet tension in the chest, a restlessness in the soul, a voice inside that says, "This should be different." And so we wrestle with reality. We question why our lives don't look like the dreams we once held. We try to reshape people, outcomes, the very fabric of our experience into something that fits our ideal. But the more we resist, the more drained we become. Life doesn't soften under pressure. It stiffens. The river doesn't flow more easily when we rage against its current. It simply swallows us. And yet, we continue to fight. We think that surrender means failure, that acceptance means defeat. We've been conditioned to believe that destiny must be conquered, like a mountain, like an enemy, like a challenge to overcome. But destiny is not something to be conquered. It is something to be understood. And that understanding does not come through struggle, but through surrender. This doesn't mean giving up. It means letting go of the illusion that you are meant to control every detail of your journey. It means listening instead of forcing, trusting instead of chasing. The truth is, when we fight our fate, we are often fighting ourselves, fighting the version of us that is trying to emerge, fighting the life that is trying to bloom through us. We cling to what we know, even when it hurts. We hold on to dreams that no longer fit. We worship control because it feels safer than uncertainty. But growth lives in uncertainty. Freedom lives in surrender. The longer you resist what is, the further you drift from what could be. And yet, surrender is terrifying. It asks us to release our plans, to sit in the unknown, to admit that we don't have all the answers. But in that admission, there is power. Because the moment you stop resisting is the moment you begin to receive. Receive clarity, receive peace, receive the strength to walk a different way. Not because you've given up on yourself, but because you've finally remembered who you are. Fighting fate is not strength. It is fear disguised as effort. And fear has a way of shrinking your world. It keeps you cycling through the same battles, repeating the same lessons, chasing the same illusions. But when you choose to stop fighting, when you breathe, when you open, you begin to see things differently. The job that ended wasn't a failure. It was a doorway. The person who left wasn't a curse. They were a teacher. The plan that fell apart wasn't your ruin. It was your redirection. You begin to understand that everything you tried to resist was actually trying to set you free. Fate is not always kind, but it is always aligned. And when you stop resisting it, you stop living from fear. You start moving with truth. It doesn't mean life becomes easy. It means life becomes real. And real is where healing begins. When you stop fighting your fate, you give space for your intuition to speak, for the quiet wisdom inside you to rise. You begin to see the difference between what you want and what you need. And you begin to trust that what you need will find you, not through control, but through connection. Some of the most beautiful transformations begin when we stop asking, why me? And start asking, what now? When we stop clinging to the life we planned and start embracing the life that is unfolding. When we stop believing that peace lies in the future and start finding it here, in the breath, in the moment, in the now. You were never meant to live in resistance. You were meant to live in alignment. To walk not with clenched fists, but with open hands. To meet life not with armor, but with presence. There is a life that is trying to reach you, not the one you imagined, but the one that holds the truth of who you are. It does not demand that you fight. It asks that you listen, that you notice, that you surrender to the deeper rhythm beneath the noise. And when you do, everything begins to shift, not outside you, but within. The war ends. The weight lifts. And you realize that peace was never found in changing your fate, but in making peace with it, in walking beside it, in letting it reveal not just where you are going, but who you are becoming. So stop fighting, not because you're weak, but because you're wise. Not because you failed, but because you've finally seen this was never about winning. It was about remembering. Remembering that your fate is not a punishment. It is a path. And you don't have to walk it alone. You just have to stop resisting the road you're already on. It's easy to believe that transformation happens in sudden moments. A breakthrough, a revelation, a crisis that flips your world and forces you to start over. But the truth is, you are always becoming. Every moment you thought was insignificant, every quiet decision you made, every time you chose growth over comfort, it mattered. You were becoming through the days you endured, through the jobs you outgrew, through the relationships that ended before you were ready, through the choices you made without knowing where they would lead. Life doesn't shape you all at once. It shapes you in layers, subtly, gently, sometimes painfully. It reshapes you through a series of small unveilings, a glance that awakens something, a conversation that plants a seed, a silence that teaches more than words ever could. And the version of you that stands here today is not an accident. It is a mosaic, a living story written in broken pieces and golden threads. You are not a single event. You are a collection of seasons. 1,000 moments stitched together by resilience, by grace, by the quiet courage to keep going when no one was watching. You were becoming the moment you chose to try again after failing. You were becoming the day you decided to forgive, even when your heart was still aching. You were becoming when you stayed kind in a world that taught you to be cold. Becoming isn't a destination. It's a devotion. A willingness to meet yourself anew, again and again, without judgment. A commitment to remain open, even when you're scared. A choice to grow through the cracks instead of pretending they're not there. The self you're seeking is not a version that never breaks. It's the one who breaks beautifully, who lets the light in through the wounds, who allows life to soften the sharp edges, to make space where once there was only defense. The problem is, we're taught to measure ourselves by arrival points, titles, achievements, milestones, as if the soul were a race to be won, not a mystery to be explored. But you are not late. You are not behind. You are not less because your path looks different. You are exactly where you need to be, becoming in your own sacred rhythm. Your journey cannot be compared, because no one else has your fire, your ache, your tenderness. No one else has lived your story, and no one else will bloom in quite the same way. You are always becoming, even when you felt stuck, even when nothing made sense, even when you were lost, especially then, because it's in the moments of doubt, of stillness, of shadow, that your roots grow deeper, that your soul begins to listen to something quieter than ambition, something older than fear, something more real than perfection. You are not broken because you're in transition. You are unfolding. And some chapters of becoming are messy, confusing, lonely, but they are not without purpose. They are not without grace. If you could zoom out and see the entirety of your life from above, you'd see the pattern, the way the darkness led to light, the way the detours led to the truth, the way the endings were really beginnings dressed in sorrow. But you don't need to see the whole picture to trust the process. You just need to keep showing up, keep breathing, keep choosing what aligns. Becoming is a practice, a slow burn, a sacred spiral, not a straight line. There is no final version of you to chase, no perfect self to arrive at, only deeper layers of truth to uncover, only more loving ways to meet yourself. And that, too, is destiny. Not something outside of you, but something unfolding from within. The more you let go of who you think you should be, the more space you create for who you truly are. The more you release the pressure to perform, the more freedom you find in presence. And in that presence, you realize you are never behind. You are never off track. You are always becoming more aware, more open, more whole. And the journey, as unpredictable and imperfect as it has always been sacred. So pause, breathe, honor the path behind you, honor the path ahead. But most of all, honor the you who's still walking, still learning, still unfolding. There is wisdom in your weariness, strength in your softness, power in your becoming. And you don't need to arrive to be enough. You already are. We've all asked it, in whispers or in silence. What kind of life am I meant to live? It's the question that keeps us up at night, hidden behind our routines, folded into our plans. We wonder if there is a script, a grand design we're supposed to follow, and if somehow we've missed our cue. We ask if we're living the life we were meant for, or merely surviving in the one we settled into. But maybe the better question is not what you were meant for, but what you are creating. We speak of destiny like it's a road with signs, a trail we're supposed to recognize, follow, and never stray from. But what if destiny isn't something we find? What if it's something we shape with our attention, with our presence, with the small choices we make every day? Not the dramatic decisions, but the gentle ones. The way you speak to yourself in the mirror, The way you forgive when no one apologizes. The way you show up for what your heart needs, even when your mind is afraid. These are the threads of destiny, not pre-written by the stars, but co-created by your soul and your willingness to listen. You don't need to have it all figured out. The life you're meant to live is not a destination with one clear sign. It's a quiet unfolding, a truth that emerges when you stop chasing and start listening. The truth is, there are many lives you could live. Some are beautiful, but not yours. Some are safe, but suffocating. Some are loud and celebrated, but empty inside. The life that's meant for you, the one that feels like home in your bones, that's the one you build, choice by choice. Not from pressure, but from alignment. Not from fear, but from truth. It's not about what the world says you should want. It's about what lights you up quietly, what brings you peace in the silence, what feels honest even when no one's watching. You don't owe the world a grand story. You don't need to change everything. You just need to show up to the life that's waiting for you to notice it, already here, already whispering. And maybe that life isn't perfect. Maybe it's messy and ordinary. But maybe it's the exact life that will grow your soul. Maybe it's not the life that gets applause, but the one that brings you closer to your center. We live in a world obsessed with more. Bigger dreams, louder success, constant growth. But the soul doesn't measure in numbers. The soul measures in depth, in honesty, in connection, in how fully you are living this one moment, not the next. The life you're meant to live isn't on the other side of some massive decision. It's here, in how you answer the phone, in how you love your people, in how you listen when someone is in pain, in how you allow yourself to rest, to breathe, to feel. You are not missing your destiny. You are either present to it or distracted from it. And the good news is, you can return at any moment. That's the gift. You can choose again. You can wake up to the life you've been avoiding. You can let go of the life you thought you should live and step into the one that actually fits. Not perfectly, but truthfully, authentically, wholly. You are not meant to live someone else's dream. You are not meant to perform a role that leaves your soul starving. You are not meant to spend your life proving. You are meant to live fully, bravely, honestly, even if no one understands, even if no one applauds, even if your life looks quiet on the outside. Because if it feels right on the inside, that is enough. That is everything. You don't need to wait for a sign. You don't need to know all the answers. You just need to start asking the right questions. What makes me feel alive? What drains my light? What do I do only to be accepted? And what would I do even if no one noticed? These are the questions that reveal your true path. The life you're meant to live is not hidden. It's just waiting for you to slow down enough to see it. And once you see it, not in theory, but in your body, your breath, your longing, you'll know. You'll feel the shift, the return, the peace, and you'll stop looking for signs. You'll become the sign, the evidence that you don't have to be extraordinary to live a meaningful life. You just have to be awake to it, present with it, grateful for it. And slowly, the life you were meant to live and the one you choose to create, they become the same thing. Not because fate handed it to you, but because you met it. You showed up. You dared to belong to yourself. And that is the real miracle. Not that you followed some perfect plan, but that you made your life sacred, one small choice at a time. There is a quiet calling that has followed you your whole life. It doesn't shout. It doesn't demand. It waits patiently, beneath the noise, beneath the pressure, beneath the roles you are told to play. It's the soft pull in your chest when you're alone. The ache that rises when your life looks fine on the outside, but feels hollow on the inside. It's not here to give you answers. It's here to bring you home, not to a place, but to yourself. We are not taught to listen to this voice. We're taught to be practical, to be realistic, to fit in. And so we ignore it. We drown it out with busyness, with striving, with success that never really satisfies, but it never leaves. Because it is you, the truest you, the part of you that remembers why you came, not to impress, not to compete, not to perform, but to live, to feel, to love, to grow. The soul's calling is not a job or a title. It's not always loud or clear. Sometimes it comes as longing, sometimes as restlessness, sometimes as a deep grief for the life you haven't lived yet. And if you've ever felt like something is missing, even when everything seems right, that's the call, the invitation to come back. Not to who you used to be, but to who you were before the world told you who to be. You all carry a unique thread, a way of seeing, a way of being, a way of giving something only we can give. And when we ignore that, when we abandon ourselves to fit into what's expected, something begins to die. Not all at once, but slowly. A dimming, a drifting, a quiet ache that becomes unbearable over time. But the soul is patient. It doesn't punish. It waits for the moment you finally get tired of pretending, tired of performing, tired of the numbness. And in that exhaustion, something breaks open. A small, honest voice says, there has to be more than this. And that's where the return begins. Coming home to your soul's calling is not about changing your life overnight. It's about remembering, listening, trusting what stirs in you, even if it makes no sense, even if it scares you, especially if it scares you. Because the things that scare us most are often the ones that lead us back to who we really are. We're afraid to follow the call because we think it will cost us everything, our comfort, our image, our stability. But the real cost isn't ignoring it. The cost is a life that looks right but feels wrong. A life that checks every box but leaves your soul empty. When you begin to honor your calling, even in the smallest ways, something shifts. You breathe deeper. You walk differently. You speak more honestly. You start to feel at home inside your own skin. And you realize that destiny isn't about doing something great. It's about living in alignment with what's real, what's sacred, what's true. You don't need to prove your worth. You don't need to earn your place here. You already belong. The calling is not to become someone else. It's to become more deeply yourself. The self you were before the world told you to shrink. Before you believed you weren't enough. Before you learned to hide. That self is still there. Beneath the noise. Beneath the pain. Waiting. Ready. When you live from this place, from the soul, you no longer need certainty. You don't need to control every outcome. Because you're no longer living from fear. You're living from alignment. You're no longer chasing purpose. You're embodying it. You're no longer begging for signs. You've become one. This is not the end of the journey. It's the beginning of the truest part. The part where you stop seeking your fate and start living it from within. Where you stop asking what the world wants from you and start asking what your soul longs to give. Where you stop fighting who you are and start becoming who you've always been. You don't need to burn your life down to start over. You just need to listen. To trust the voice that's always been there. To take one small step toward home, and then another, and another. Until you wake up one day and realize you are living it. The life that feels like yours. Not perfect, not painless, but real, honest, free. The life that whispers yes in your bones. The life that requires no explanation because it fits you from the inside out. That is your calling. And no one else can answer it for you. No one else can walk your path. But you don't walk it alone. Life walks with you. Spirit walks with you. And every time you take a step toward truth, truth takes a step toward you. This is not the end. It's a return. A reunion with what has always been waiting. The home within your own heart. The destiny not written in stars, but written in your breath, your longing, your courage. So here you are, not lost, not late, not broken, just finally ready to come home. And that, more than anything, is what you were meant for. You've walked far, through memory, through sorrow, through silence and truth. And now, you are standing at the edge of something beautiful. The realization that your life is not a series of random events, but a sacred unfolding. You were never lost. You were always becoming. Your destiny is not a path to find, but a home to remember. So take this quiet knowing with you, not as an answer, but as a compass. And when the noise returns, let this whisper guide you back. You are exactly where you need to be.